Hi everyone, very excited to have all of you here. I'm Nidhi Mehrotra. I'm the current co-chair of this TIG, and today's presentation will be by Dr. Chad Key and Dr. Molly Matthews-Ewald. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Molly. And today's discussion is on applying culturally responsive practices to center and amplify voices in a higher education environment. This has been trademarked by this group, so I'm looking forward to this. I've been fortunate enough to attend this during the American Evaluation Association conference, and we're looking forward to a lively discussion. So with that, I will let Chad and Molly introduce themselves because I think I won't be able to go through all their accomplishments. I will let them decide which ones they want to highlight.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nadie, and welcome to all of you. And special thanks to my co-facilitator here, Dr. Molly Matthews-Ewald. We're really excited about sharing with you all today topic around applying culturally responsive practice to engage multiple voices. We facilitated this session during the past AEA conference, and so we thought we would abbreviate it here for our first session for this TIG. To share in a shortened version, but to also create space for deeper discussion as we finish up. We'll introduce ourselves and then we'll move right into the content. As Nadine mentioned, I am Chad Key and I am the CEO and founder of Whitworth Key Consulting. We're located in Washington, D.C., founded in 2016. And our capabilities are in the areas of professional development, strategic planning, DI assessments, and program evaluation. And we cross multiple industries, with most of our work being in the federal government and some work nonprofits, and as well as in higher education. My background is in higher ed as an administrator as well as an assistant professor. And so much of our work as the company started, we connected with colleges and universities to conduct these assessments. So you will see that kind of in the background or themed throughout the session as you may think about the context in which we've done this work the most, which is in the higher education space. And so you may hear some of that language as we share. I am also the current co-chair of the Assessment in Higher Ed TIG, and working closely with Nadie as we move forward to support the TIG, and also welcome and inviting all of you to actively support the TIG as well. Molly, will you introduce yourself and then we'll share?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chad. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Molly Matthews-Ewald. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation with Whitworth Key Consulting. My background is in public health sciences and social behavioral, but as we know, certainly crosses the education space quite extensively. I'm also adjunct faculty at West Virginia University, so also have that as a through line as well. And we're really looking forward to sharing more with you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Molly. If you would share screen, and where we want to begin to help to contextualize this. Again, we're looking at applying culturally responsive practice and engaging multiple voices throughout an assessment. And so for the sake of time, what we want to do here is to more or less walk through each of the 4 steps of this assessment model that we've created and that is patent pending. And this model is used as a guide for our assessments that we do not only in the college and university space, but also in outside of that space. And so we use this model to work as a framework. And so for this conversation, what we intend to do is to name each step and then to share with you ways in which we engage multiple voices, often voices that are silenced in data collection or unheard, in creative ways that can help to inform data and yield richer findings that can be useful for our partners and clients. So with that, we'll start with the first step, which is conducting an environmental scan. And with this scan, in short, this is really our time where we initiate a contract agreement with a partner where we're really setting the stage and getting to know and building relationships. And so we're really looking at identifying existing practices to understand the current culture of that organization. Right. And so that could involve several different ways of coming to know, from reviewing documents to one-on-one meetings with leadership, group informal discussions, to ask questions that will help guide the assessment. So as we do not want to enter into an organization hastily, right, and rushing. So we really want to be sensitive and take our time to get to know our partner and get to know where some of the opportunities are, where strengths of the organization exist, as well as where are opportunities for growth. What are the concerns that are at play as well that we can really focus on with the intent of addressing some of those gaps. So that could be, again, a review of materials, one-on-one sessions, sharing that information back and forth and gaining feedback. So again, that environmental scan is an opportunity for us to get to know our partner in a very meaningful way. So what are some of the things that we do to engage voices at this step one of conducting an environmental scan? So one part of our conversations is, who are the key partners that are within the organization, as well as external partners who may influence the assessment. So we want to kind of build what may look like an org chart, if you will, or just knowing who are all of the players. And so then we get to name and then identify those who we would want to speak with one-on-one or in group settings, again, to capture as much information as possible. Particularly if this is related to a diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment, and we know the current culture and climate around DEI and the counter attacks on that. But if this is a DEI assessment, we certainly look for any reports that may have focused on DEI, any data that's been collected, and ways that we might be able to review those data, and any other relevant reports that departments, sub-departments may have generated. And so then coordinating those one-on-one informal discussions with those key partners. Once we have reviewed any reports, those reports may lead us to a person or group of people. And so then we may want to learn more about what they learned or what they're doing around assessing their current environment, whatever that might look like. And then scheduling open virtual discussions with those key stakeholders as well, so that we can say, hey, so far in the past 60 days or so in our meetings, in our discussion groups, this is what we've learned. And we want to share that back out for reaction and see then how that information can be refined in a way to establish a good groundwork for the assessment. And then using that information learned to inform the subsequent data collection protocols and survey design. So this step one and the information learned then takes us to defining and developing that focus group protocol. All right, so I'll pause there and shift it to Molly and to discuss step two.
Thanks, Chad. Yes, so as Chad is describing, the environmental scan really lays the foundation and really enables us to pick up some of those key pieces that we think we should be investigating. So not only from those key partners, but also kind of independently, things that folks might not be sharing, right? But things that we think are important to kind of uplift. And that's one of the ways, again, that we uplift those silenced voices, is to kind of pick up and really spend that crucial time in the environmental scan. So as Chad mentioned, the background from the environmental scan goes directly into our second step of facilitating focus group sessions. So the intention of the focus group sessions are to really understand, in their own words, the experiences of staff, students, other potential external partners, really around growth opportunities, what's working well, again, unpacking those pieces that we've picked up through the conversations in that environmental scan. From the start, we'll start thinking about focus group questions. We'll structure the focus group questions that draw on information both from the conversations, independent reviews of the documents. And then importantly, we will pilot test or pre-test the focus group protocols with the intended participants. That's really to ensure that we are able to pick up on those nuances, again, to uplift voices and to hear the diverse perspectives and experiences of folks that are going to participate with us. And of course, any feedback that we get, we refine the protocols. Once that's done, we'll kind of train our team members who are actually doing the data collection around those particular nuances that we found with the refinements to the focus group protocols. I will also say that a lot of intentionality goes into the composition of our focus groups. So for example, and that's by design. So for example, we'll send out a demographic questionnaire ahead of time. And this will capture shared identities or affinity groups so that we can subsequently organize the focus groups by those identities where we can, especially thinking about those that appear to be influential to participants' experiences within an organization. Again, all going back to the environmental scanning, kind of what we've learned there. We are very transparent throughout this process. So we'll also, if the decision is made to organize by those demographics, we inform the participants ahead of time the purpose of organizing the focus groups by those shared identities in advance. So reasons for that is really to facilitate or enhance safe space for folks. And so where there are shared identities, again, that we've kind of picked up, for example, with a female faculty, we might compose focus groups with female faculty so that they can share their experiences in a space where that might be not necessarily feel as free or as safe to do so. Likewise, another way that we ensure that the space is safe and to, again, pick up the silenced voices is through, when we can, assign facilitators to the focus groups based on some of those shared demographics. So keeping the example of the female faculty member, we will try to kind of match with somebody who identifies as female as a facilitator and potentially who is former or current faculty, again, to kind of ensure that that space is safe, not only amongst those who are participating, but also from the facilitator. Throughout, we also really emphasize and communicate respect, cultural responsiveness, safety, and confidentiality through recruitment. Our team also engages in ongoing self-reflection and keeps each other accountable, and pushes each other to think critically about ways to continually uplift voices. Also thinking about groups who we might have overlooked, and then ways that we can incorporate their voices as well. During the focus group discussion itself, we kind of set the stage or the foundation to underscore that, of course, all voices are important and should be heard, and all experiences are valued. And we find that that's incredibly important, especially when we talk with and non-faculty or kind of staff, as well at universities, for example. who might not have had the opportunity necessarily to share their experience. And so we also facilitate focus groups to invite all participants, again, to have time and space to share their experiences. And what that sometimes means for us is to ask those who are more talkative to kind of make space for those other folks. After the focus group discussion, we offer additional opportunities for participants to share their experiences and perspectives after the session. And we found that this is helpful for two reasons. One, sometimes people think of additional information and say, gosh, I wish I had shared that. And secondly, sometimes folks might not have felt comfortable sharing something with the larger group. And so we offer the opportunity to do that either through a follow-up email or even a telephone call. And again, that also enables an additional layer of confidentiality. Finally, and I think Chad's probably going to talk about this a little bit more at the reporting stage, but we engage in both member checking and sense making sessions. So with member checking, that's kind of after we have collected the focus group data, we will run the information past some select participants, and they have the opportunity to say, yes, you interpreted that correctly, or no, you didn't get that quite right. And that would either be from transcripts or notes. So, but they have the opportunity to be involved in that as well. Pause there to see if there's anything you wanted to add, Chad, to step 2.
Right. Yes. So, and I certainly want to agree. Someone mentioned in the chat that it's not always possible to match affinity groups to the facilitator, and you're exactly right. And we totally agree. And we've had that experience. And in those moments, we, as a team, try to look at, well, what are other ways that we might create a space that is comfortable and or allowing potential participants to speak with us personally one-on-one. We also know in the background here, there is a management of resources around how much more time might we be able to allocate for phone calls, emails, one-on-one conversations, but also retaining or centering, being culturally responsive in every way possible that we can. The other piece I would offer up, and you may have mentioned, Molly, I'm not for certain, is position and managing power dynamics in that focus group session. So in the event, for example, again, we've done this for the most part in college and university spaces, but we would not have a tenured and non-tenured faculty in the same room. Right. And so there's a power dynamic there, or a supervisor and someone who reports to them in the same room. And so then there's also that piece around how we assign groups together to ensure that we're managing power as much as possible. And just saw another question or note there around language. We have also in past experiences asked the question around, is there a preferred language or a need for another language in facilitating that focus group session? And in the event that there's a yes to that, then we seek to find others or the group of people who may have said yes, that, hey, we need someone who speaks Spanish, for example. And so then if that's the case, we would then have that group, those individuals grouped together for that session that would be facilitated in that particular language. So thank you. Great questions. I'm just trying to catch some of them as they're coming into the chat. So Molly, you want to continue?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So the third step is design and disseminate the survey. So again, as you're probably picking up, each of these steps is very much interconnected and part of uplifting the voices and recognizing participants' expertise is to not duplicate efforts and to be respectful of those who are sharing their knowledge with us. So the way we do, or what we do during the survey stage, again, is to draw from the information from the environmental scan stage, from the focus group, and really and that's to develop the survey instrument. we developed a customized survey that aligns with the organizational, both micro and macro culture and context. And importantly, and I'm not sure if we totally mentioned this, but around culture is thinking about both kind of individual level cultural, but also organizational, and thinking about culture holistically. And so culture and context. And in that regard, really, again, home in on the survey questions to focus on that. We include where relevant, again, the additional demographic variables, and these can tie back to the demographic questionnaire that we mentioned in the previous step to kind of help us organize. One important piece here that I want to mention is that we aim to not be redundant with the demographic questionnaire, but then be only asking demographic questions that emerged as particularly important. So kind of not over surveying or not over asking about an individual's identity, but only those that we think are likely to have an impact or help us tell the story of folks' experiences. We ensure that the questions, of course, are relevant to the focus populations, students, staff, faculty, for example. And this might, based on our previous knowledge gathering, might warrant tailored surveys or might also be the same instrument. We, throughout the process, will also share the survey instruments with our key partners that Chad mentioned right up at the top. And also, if there is an advisory committee, we'll share the instrument with them for feedback and ensure, again, the proper focus. Importantly there too is that they can weigh in on the language and ensure that the language aligns with the existing organizational culture. And like the focus group, we also aim, again, as Chad rightfully mentioned, so long as there are resources, pilot or pre-test the survey with some of those focus populations and then update accordingly. How we show and uplift voices during the survey stage, in addition to bringing folks along and getting insights and feedback and being responsive to kind of what we've learned. On the back end for the analyses, we identify opportunities for disaggregations without identifying individuals. So being able to pull apart the data in a way that would make the wouldn't mask some of the additional stories or those silenced voices. Importantly, our rule of thumb tends to be about not disaggregating smaller than three, so 3 individuals, so that we don't, to protect confidentiality, and so that we do not inadvertently identify someone, and because we don't certainly want the opposite to happen, where there might be repercussions to that. So, and then we also engage in some of the sense making with once the analyses have been run for the survey. We'll engage in some focused sense making to help make meaning of the information. So I'll turn it back to Chad to see anything else on step 3, and then walk us through step 4.
I think I'm fine with step 3. I do see 1 or 2 questions that maybe we can capture at the end as well and kind of talk through with the group together. For step 4, the sharing of findings, trends, and patterns. In some ways, this is the voice of the consultants, right? And so one of the things we did share in our presentation at AEA is, there's the voices of the participants, which obviously is important and key and prioritize. And then it's also the consultants and how we show up being culturally responsive, culturally competent, and sharing findings in a way that those who have allocated time and resources can digest and use the information And so we share those findings, trends, and patterns from the environmental scan, the focus groups, and the surveys, and how we built up to these findings and communicating those findings, often organized by those social identities where we can, while protecting identities, right? So it is important that now we have, at this stage, up to this stage, secured a level of trust and relationship and protecting our participants and those who shared, the people who shared, in a way. Now in this report, we want to also make sure we're continuing to protect their identities and what they've shared with us, so not to experience any marginalization or retribution as a result of our writing and our report. In our reporting, we do consider the levels, learning levels, education levels of everyone within that community as we are drafting and writing a report. Again, making that report accessible, because on the outcome or the next step of this is, again, a person retaining their voice, consultants to communicate findings, but also the community members are then able to use the information in the spaces that they occupy and places that they influence. Then incorporating those recommendations, often in our focus group, as an example, we ask the question around what recommendations might you offer to this organization to improve the culture, the climate, how it might revert back to the overarching questions. And we do insert those recommendations in that report as well, as a way of capturing their voices that they spoke and shared with us, what they see as recommendations, and not landing solely on the recommendations of us as the external partner, but also the people who make up that community. And then allowing space for feedback from the community. So in space, often what we try to do, there's sometimes time and resources may not allow, but what we try to do, and we see this as a strategy for engaging voices or multiple voices, again, is creating an open discussion. Here's the report, not at its final accepted stage, but this is what we learned, and then able to, again, have an open discussion and dialogue with community members. That might be a series of discussion organized at different times, in order to encourage as much participation as possible, and to see what might shift, right, in terms of what we heard from the community, to refine or modify perhaps what we have submitted, in case we need to shift that in order to align with what's more accurate with what was shared. So in short, those are the 4 steps, and we're right at 3:32, a little bit past halfway of the hour, that we wanted to share again around some of the things that we're doing. We know that it's always a work in progress, and we're always identifying more opportunities. Different environments and different organizations yield well to what we've done in the past. And in some instances, based upon that environmental scan, we get to say, oh, well, here's another opportunity for us to insert or think about perhaps a different way of engaging the community and ensuring that multiple voices are heard. And again, particularly voices that are often silenced, are communities that are ignored. All right, so we'll pause there for questions that you all may have, and look forward to the discussion.